Judge Prescott had believed that issuing a simple fine would keep Pam Bondi in line. What he never anticipated, however, was the fierce way she would break down his entire argument in front of everyone in the courtroom. The courthouse in Tampa, Florida, had witnessed its fair share of legal battles, but this particular morning would unfold in a way no one could have predicted. Pam Bondi, as sharp and self-assured as ever, stepped through the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom, her briefcase gripped tightly in one hand. Her other hand subtly adjusted the lapel of her blazer as she walked. This hearing was supposed to be another routine matter, a case she could easily argue without breaking a sweat. As she walked toward the defendant's table, Pam could feel the eyes of Judge Alan Prescott on her. The man was known for his no-nonsense, authoritative demeanor. But today, he wasn't looking at her face. His gaze was fixed just below her collarbone, a simple gold cross hanging from her neck. The air in the room shifted, becoming thick with tension. There was a brief silence before Judge Prescott's voice broke through, sharp as a gavel. "Miss Bondi, I must remind you that religious symbols have no place in my courtroom." Pam barely flinched. Her response was calm, even, as if she were addressing a trivial issue. "Your Honor, you're wearing a cross." The judge's expression remained unreadable as he retorted, "That violates the neutrality of this space. You'll need to remove it or face a fine." A ripple of murmurs spread through the spectators in attendance, with the bailiff shifting uncomfortably. The clerk shot a quick glance at the judge before looking back at Pam. This was not the first time a judge had attempted to assert control over his courtroom in an unusual way, but it was the first time anyone had considered fining a lawyer over a necklace. Pam remained unmoved. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but my cross is no different than a wedding ring or a locket with a family photo inside." Judge Prescott's face hardened slightly, but his expression remained stern. "That's not how I see it," he said with a sigh, as though growing tired of the discussion. "Either remove it, or I will issue a fine for disregarding courtroom neutrality." Pam Bondi stood her ground. For the first time in her career, she found herself fined, not for misconduct or a procedural violation, but for wearing a piece of jewelry. It wasn't the fine itself that mattered to her, but what it represented. With unwavering calm, Pam refused to remove the cross. Instead, she folded her hands over her briefcase, her expression cool, her resolve firm. She wasn't about to let this matter slip by unnoticed. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to formally address this issue," she declared, her voice steady. Judge Prescott raised an eyebrow, his gaze now narrowing. "Address it?" "Yes. I'll be filing an objection and would like to state my argument on the record." Judge Prescott glanced at the clock on the wall, a clear indication of his frustration. "Ms. Bondi, I'm sure you're aware that this hearing is about a business dispute, not your personal grievances." His tone dripped with condescension, but Pam was unshaken. "I'm also aware, Your Honor, that the First Amendment doesn't take a recess for personal opinions." The room shifted. The court reporter paused, her fingers hovering over her keyboard, waiting for the next move. Pam could feel the room growing tense, not because of the business dispute, but because a seasoned attorney had just directly challenged a judge's authority. Pam knew she was walking a delicate line, but she had no intention of backing down. "You're fining me for wearing a cross. Let's break that down legally, shall we?" Pam's voice remained composed, though there was an edge of determination in her tone. As she reached into her briefcase, she wasn't just preparing to argue her case. She was about to dismantle the judge's entire premise. Judge Prescott didn't realize just how deep a hole he had dug for himself. Pam pulled out a single sheet of paper and laid it carefully on the table. Every movement she made was deliberate, each second of silence increasing the palpable tension in the room. "Your Honor, you're fining me for violating courtroom neutrality. But can you please tell me what legal precedent you are basing this on? She asked, her voice now cool and unwavering. Pam tapped the paper before her, her finger poised. Under the First Amendment, personal religious expression is protected, especially when it does not disrupt proceedings. The judge let out a scoff, clearly dismissing her argument. But Pam pressed on, citing landmark cases. In Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969, the Supreme Court ruled that individuals do not shed their constitutional rights when they enter a government institution, whether it's a school or a courtroom. And in West Virginia, State Board of Education v. Barnett, 1943, the Supreme Court ruled that forcing individuals to remove or hide symbols of their personal belief is a violation of their First Amendment rights. Judge Prescott's jaw tightened, but Pam wasn't done. Now, Your Honor, would you like me to continue, or would you prefer to reconsider that fine? A long silence followed, and the weight of her words hung in the air. Pam had skillfully cornered the judge, and everyone in the room could see it. The judge tapped his fingers on the armrest, clearly agitated. But despite his internal struggle, his pride wouldn't allow him to back down so easily. This is not a religious debate, Ms. Bondi, Judge Prescott snapped, trying to regain control. Pam tilted her head, her voice cutting through the tension. Then why did you make it one? A few quiet gasps filled the room as the weight of her challenge hit home. I will stop when I receive a legal justification for this fine, Your Honor, because so far I haven't heard one. The judge shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but there was no turning back. Pam had made her stand. If he chose to proceed with the fine, she would appeal, and the case would quickly escalate into a public spectacle. Judge Prescott hesitated, his ego at war with the cold, hard reality of the situation. Finally, with visible reluctance, he muttered, "The fine is rescinded." Pam allowed a small, satisfied smile to cross her lips. "Much appreciated, Your Honor," she replied. But this moment wasn't just about winning the fine. She had sent a message, one that would echo through the legal community. As Pam walked out of the courthouse, the response from the outside world was swift. Within an hour, a local news outlet had posted the headline, "Florida judge attempts to fine attorney for wearing a cross, but it doesn't go as planned." The story spread like wildfire. Colleagues, former classmates, and journalists flooded her phone with messages. But Pam wasn't interested in the attention. She had bigger plans. This was about something far more significant than one judge or one attorney. The real fight, Pam realized, was about the precedent this case could set. Would other judges follow Prescott's lead? Would attorneys be pressured to leave their personal beliefs at home to avoid confrontation in court? This case had the potential to spark a larger conversation about courtroom neutrality and personal rights. By the evening, the story had reached national audiences. Social media was alive with debates, and legal commentators were chiming in. Some defended the judge's stance, while others saw Pam's defiance as a necessary stand for constitutional rights. As the day wore on, Pam knew that the fallout had only just begun. Judge Prescott hadn't given up, and she could sense that this battle was far from over. The legal world was small, and word of Prescott's actions had already spread. That evening, Pam received another surprise. The Florida Bar Association issued a statement that hinted at potential disciplinary action. It was a subtle warning, and Pam knew what it meant. Prescott was already trying to rally institutional support. "He's not backing down," Pam murmured, leaning back in her chair, her mind working through the implications. "Neither am I." The gloves were off. Prescott had made the first move, but Pam wasn't about to play by his rules. She would ensure that this fight went public, that the world saw what was really happening. Prescott had expected Pam to defend herself quietly, to move on with little fanfare. But Pam had other plans. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the integrity of the legal system. Pam wasted no time contacting Lisa Reynolds, a journalist she trusted, who quickly agreed to bring this issue into the spotlight. "You'll have it by tomorrow," Lisa assured her. Pam knew the time had come. Prescott had miscalculated. His attempt to quietly silence her had backfired. By morning, the story was everywhere, with social media buzzing and legal experts weighing in from all sides. The headlines spoke for themselves. Florida judge faces backlash after attempting to fine attorney for wearing a cross. As Pam sat in her office, watching the discussion unfold, she realized this was no longer just about her. It was about setting a precedent that would protect all individuals from overreach by those in power. Pam leaned back, taking a deep breath. She hadn't just fought for herself. She had fought for everyone who ever stepped into a courtroom, for everyone whose rights could be taken away on a whim. This was just the beginning. "Never let someone in power strip away your rights without a fight," she said quietly. Pam Bondi's confrontation with Judge Prescott was not just a personal victory, but a significant stand for constitutional rights. By challenging the judge's arbitrary fine over her wearing a cross, Pam demonstrated the importance of standing up against judicial overreach and protecting individual freedoms, especially in a courtroom. Her unwavering defense of the First Amendment, citing landmark legal precedents, exposed the judge's selective enforcement and forced him to rescind the fine. However, the true victory was not in the fine itself, but in the message Pam sent to the legal community and beyond. That personal beliefs should not be suppressed or punished in a public space when they do not disrupt proceedings. The fallout from the case quickly escalated, reaching national attention. The story ignited debates on social media and among legal commentators, questioning the boundaries of courtroom neutrality and personal expression. With the support of media coverage and legal experts, Pam turned the situation into a broader conversation about protecting rights and challenging unjust authority. Ultimately, Pam's actions sent a clear message. Standing your ground, even against powerful opposition, can lead to positive change. Her commitment to constitutional principles reinforced the idea that sometimes a single act of defiance can alter the course of legal history.